How we doing, folks? Standard dog entrance. This is Zelda over here, by the way. Come here, Zelda. Well, she's gonna be stubborn, but that right there is Zelda, my girlfriend's dog. And y'all know Jax. Y'all two need to go. 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 Go, Jax. Not that way. That was the wrong way. I love them, but they make recording very difficult. Anyway, dogs aside, today what I have for y'all is a review of A Wise Man's Fear. I previously reviewed The Name of the Wind, and if you all recall, or if you've seen that video, I loved The Name of the Wind. The Name of the Wind is arguably my favorite book. It's definitely up there. It may be my favorite book. And I am a huge fan of Rothfus's writing style. So, how does the sequel hold up to the high bar set by the first book? In our sequel, we follow Kvothe, who spent a lot of time previously at the university, outside of the university a bit. Not to give any spoilers, but he, for various reasons, spends a great deal less time at the university than he did in the first book. You know, even though the university is what he considers his home, and it's the place he wants to be, some circumstances don't allow him to be there. When we follow him, when he eventually ends up in the service of Mayor Alvaron, correct me if I'm saying that wrong, I'm sorry. I would Google it on my phone, but I'm recording on my phone. I believe it is Mayor Alvaron, who is like the second most powerful guy, right behind the king or something like that. I don't remember the exact, rankings and all that. But he ends up in the service of this insanely powerful political figure. And we kind of follow him through his service to this guy. And in the same way where the first book really follows a lot of Kvothe's young life, and it's a lot of his coming of age into his teenage years, the second book is a much shorter period of time, but it is his life as a teenager. I believe he's 15 through 17 here. I don't even know if he's fully 17 by the end of it. I'm pretty sure at the very beginning he says he's 15. I was just listening to it again recently. Today, actually. I'm on chapter 6 or something like that. But it is very much still a coming of age story, and we get to see a lot of things foretold in the first book when he introduces himself and says all of the things that he's done. We see a lot of those things come to pass, and we see how they're not exactly what the stories tell them to be, which is a very common theme among these books. Stories change and warp over time and aren't exactly a representation of the truth, but they're always based in truth, in real events. Well, I say always. Sometimes Kvothe just lies and makes up stories. If you've read the first book and you've paid close attention, clearly things are not going to go, hunky-dory, super happy for Kvothe. He's clearly in a very dark state. As the innkeeper, he's in a pretty low point in his life. And the second book just continues to build towards whatever the tragedy is that has led to both the state of Kvothe and the world. But it also still leaves a lot of promises unfulfilled and a lot of questions unanswered. As a matter of fact, I'd argue that the biggest question is still unanswered for the series, which makes complete sense because this is book 2 and not book 3 in a trilogy, where, hopefully, eventually, someday, book 3 will come out and we can have these answers. Despite loving this series, I'm not not near as impatient as most people waiting for the third book. I think it's been like 8 years, but whatever. There are so many good books out there, people. Read other books. If it never comes out, there's hundreds and thousands of fantastic stories out there that you could never read in your entire lifetime. So, don't be stressing over book 3 of the King Killer Chronicles, even if I would really, really like to finally read it. So what is my verdict, circling back to our original question, on does it hold up to the first book? The answer is yes and no. Let's talk about a few of the cons of this book. And I say a few, but it's really only one, in my opinion. There's 1.5. The first one being first and foremost, like the linchpin that this book and the series hang on, is Kvothe. If you like Kvothe, I happen to really, really enjoy Kvothe. I think he's hilarious. I think he's an idiot. And I think he's a fantastic character. And I'd probably like to be friends with him, but from a distance. You know what I mean? Kvothe tends to like to be the center of attention. And so do I a little bit. So we get into conflict there, you know what I'm saying? A little bit of button heads between us. We gotta be like proxy friends, you know? But, I think Kvothe is hilarious and I really enjoy his character, but if you don't, and basically everyone who I've listened to that has not liked the King Killer Chronicles series as a whole, it is because they don't care for Kvothe. They don't particularly like him. Some people downright hate Kvothe, and they think he's a stupid character who's a Mary Sue and uninteresting. I disagree, but I can see where they're coming from. And if that is the case, if you read the first book and you didn't like Kvothe, well, he's still Kvothe, guys. You're not gonna like this book either. But if you do like him, or even if you're, if this is our line, right? Here's the middle. This is indifference, dislike. Like, if you're any side of this line at all, then I think you'll like this book. Our second con, and my primary con, is this book is a bit more meandering than the first book. I know in the first book we follow Kvothe all over the place and it's not super plot-centric, it's just the story of his life. Now, the book is always interesting plot-wise to me. It's, the way Rothfus tells it, it's like a series of little stories and events that are all quite interesting in my opinion. There are a couple where it's like, but they're almost all really interesting and framed through Kvothe's point of view, which I really enjoy. There's little pieces of the larger overarching plot mixed in, but we're really just following his life. I really enjoy it. I really like that. But in book 2, it is a bit meandering. We spend a bit too much time sitting around a campfire with not a lot happening. Also, I remember, just thought of this, reading book 2 when Kvothe goes to a completely different culture, right? And he is training. He encounters some strange beliefs at the end. And when I first heard them, I was like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. This is ridiculous. Where'd he come up with this? And then it was kind of interesting little quirk to me how this culture was really kind of propped up as like a really sort of idyllic culture in a way. It presents itself as the ideal culture, if that makes sense. And then right at the end, as you're leaving it, Rothfus throws this monkey wrench in there of this just ridiculous belief that they have that us as readers are like, what? all this sophistication and then you believe this. I don't know. I thought it was an interesting little monkey wrench that he threw into the culture. A cool little quirk. But it was a little bit off-putting the first time I read this book. Hopping into the prose, we'll start once again with Kvothe. Like I said, if you like him, you'll love the book. If you don't, you won't. I love Kvothe. I think he's hilarious. I really enjoy following him. I enjoy his point of view. So it is a massive pro for me. Secondly, Patrick Rothfus' writing style is insane, dude. Like, his prose is so good. Like, I wish I had the mind to do what he does. Like, the way he writes every paragraph so intentionally and so layered is just amazing, and I love reading and listening to it. The prose itself is a joy for me in this book. Alongside the voice of Kvothe is just fantastic, and I really, really enjoy it. It's interesting to contrast Rothfuss's prose to someone like Brandon Sanderson. I also really, really enjoy Brandon Sanderson's writing style. And my brain, I feel like, functions more like his. He's pretty direct, Sanderson is. And I enjoy that. At least in my opinion, I think he's pretty direct. Let me know if you disagree, if you've read much Sanderson. But I think he's pretty straightforward and direct with his prose. Rothfuss he layers it. You know, it's like, when you see it on the surface, that's just a nice paragraph. And then you look a little more, and you see things underneath within the prose that you didn't notice if you weren't paying attention. And I've never seen anybody write like him. And it explains part of the reason why these books take so long from him. Because he really does seem to deliberate over every page and the way he expresses the world. It's exhibited in his attention to the coin system and the way music is presented in this book. Music is such a huge part of this book, and the book is almost musical in its language. Enough of me rambling about that. Let's move on. I also really, really enjoy the overarching plot and the style which it is presented in. Have you all ever played a game like Skyrim, where you have the main quest, right? In Skyrim, your main quest, spoilers 10 years later, is to kill the dragon Alduin. You have to stop him from devouring the world, or whatever it is. I don't remember exactly. Enslaving Tamriel, I believe. And there's that quest line, right? It's right here. But there's all these points around it that are free for you to explore, and lots of people don't even do the main quest, you know? There's so much more going on in the world that's interesting. But every time you level up, it's like you gain a point towards being able to complete the main quest, right? You get a little stronger. You gain better gear. You learn new spells or something like that. And that's something that you can use in the main quest. And that's somewhat how this story feels to me. Where there's this larger overarching plot line, but we're following Kvothe on this sort of zigzag pattern that is his life leading up to the final event. And we're slowly picking up pieces as we go. Sometimes frustratingly so, because I really want to know more. And that's why it's so frustrating. The book 3 hasn't come out yet. But, I talked about that earlier. But I really enjoy it because I enjoy all the side quests that we're on. And the side quests are all linked to the main quest. So they don't feel pointless to me. The first book in particular is amazing about that. This book, like I said, is a little bit more meandering, but it is still very good. at doing that.
What's going on, guys? Just editing this review here, and I realized I forgot to mention something that I had really wanted to talk about coming into the review. And I don't think I touched on quite enough in my review for Name of the Wind, and that being the magic system. As we know, by this point in the series, there are two magic systems. There is naming, and there is sympathy. Sympathy is the more hard and fast rules type of magic, where naming is understanding the true names of things, whatever that means. So it's a lot more loose magic system. But I think sympathy is a massive pro to this book. So is naming, because naming's just cool. But sympathy is a massive pro to this book because it does something that many magic systems don't clearly do. And it almost reminds me of like a fun video game to play, where there are combos and there are rules, and you can find cool, creative ways to use these rules, right? Mistborn also does this very well. And it's because of the hard rules, the firm limitations of the magic system, that it is so interesting. Because the characters have to be clever. They have to be smart. They have to work with the tools they're given. They can't just do anything with this magic. They have to be smart. They have to be creative. And it's really interesting to see the way that Kvothe himself comes up with really creative and interesting ways to use the power. Just wanted to touch on that real quick. I know the video is really long already. Back to the main video.
So what do I give A Wise Man's Fear? First of all, that's an amazing title, right? That's a fantastic title. I love that title. But Wise Man's Fear, I give it a 9 out of 10. A Name of the Wind is probably the only book that I would give a 10 out of 10 that I have read. And A Wise Man's Fear is maybe my second 9 out of 10 on this channel. If I were doing my current ranking system, I would probably give Lost Gods a 9 out of 10. Maybe like an 8.5. But as you can see, I really enjoy these books. And I highly recommend them. But as I said, the linchpin for all of this is Kvothe. If you don't like him, you won't like the series. If you do, you will. Thanks for watching, everybody. Peace out.